Well, joining us now in Canberra is the Deputy Leader of the Greens, Senator Christine Milne, and Shadow Minister for Climate Change, Environment and Water, Greg Hunt. Thank you both for joining us. Greg Hunt, not much given away tonight by Penny Wong and Ian Macfarlane, but these are very big demands from the coalition. Coal miners taken out of the scheme and many more big polluters given 94.5% of free permits. Will the government roll over?
Well, we've set out a very clear set of good faith negotiations. We'll proceed in good faith, and our objective is extremely simple to understand. It's to protect thousands of jobs, to make sure that electricity prices are not hiked for small businesses, for mums and dads and for pensioners, and thirdly, to do it in a way which meets the same emissions reduction targets as the government. All that the atmosphere knows is emissions reduction targets. So if we can deliver those, then there should be no reason why the government cannot meet our objectives.
What the Minister wants to know about is what this is all going to cost. One estimate is $20 billion between now and 2020. Ian Macfarlane has said you may run at a loss in a couple of the first 5 years with our scheme, but you will be back in surplus from then on, and with $50 billion to play with, the losses we're talking about will be easily ameliorated. Now, the government disagrees that there's $50 billion in unallocated credits. Where's the money going to come from?
Well, firstly, we think that there is a $50 billion black hole in their scheme, and that's explained by this, that they'll be taxing $120 billion. They've allocated $70. There's $50 billion that's unexplained. And we aren't giving money to anybody. All we're doing is reducing the amount of tax that is actually taken so as to keep electricity prices lower, but at the same time picking up emissions savings in areas such as agricultural offsets, voluntary action, or reducing the emissions from waste coal mine gas by demanding that it is actually used for electricity rather than simply flared. So what we're doing is we're providing other forms of saving emissions whilst at the same time reducing the total tax and therefore reducing the impact on electricity prices.
Christine Milne, a polluter's auction you've called it.
Absolutely. The interesting thing here is the focus is on how much the vested interests get from the government and the coalition. Where is the talk about what the science demands? In Bali, it was agreed that developed countries like Australia should be reducing their emissions somewhere between 25 and 40% by 2020 in order to give the world a chance of avoiding catastrophic climate change. It seems what the government has succeeded in doing is something extraordinary, and that's browning down even the coalition's ambition. Only a month or two ago they were saying that they could achieve 10%. Now they're back to the government's 5%.
Of course, pragmatism is the art of politics. Penny Wong and Ian Macfarlane have sat down on amendments the day after they were agreed in the party room there. Your amendments, I understand, went to the government last week. Will Penny Wong take you as seriously?
Well, she should, because she has said the test for the amendments that they need to be, in a climate sense, credible and economically sound. Our amendments are both those things. They go to the target. They say we should be actually looking at 25 to 40% reduction. It's 100% auctioning. It's offering no compensation to the coal-fired generators. And it's setting exactly the same standard as Professor Garneau's set for the energy-intensive trade exposed, and that is that they be compensated for their trade exposure but not for their profitability. Neither the coalition nor the government have offered any economic rationale at all for the compensation they're offering the coal-fired generators, or indeed any principles to underpin what they're giving the energy-intensive trade exposed. And all this talk about jobs, there's no agreement about jobs at all. It's just giving money to the vested interests. There's no saying they're going to keep on their levels of employment.
Yes, Greg Hunt, you're setting the bar very high here, saying your amendments are going to save thousands of jobs. How are you going to sign up to anything less than that if you come to a compromise?
Well, look, a critical thing for us is saving jobs, and we make no apology for that. We do care about whether it's paper recycling or aluminium or bauxite, whether it is small businesses such as bakers or light stores all sorts of people who would suffer from higher electricity prices, but without changing the mix of electricity, then we care about them and we're unapologetic. But we are here in good faith. We're sitting down, we're engaged. Our preference, our view, is that we can set a target and agree on that after Copenhagen. But if the government demands that they go ahead now, even though the scheme wouldn't begin until the 1st of July 2012 under either circumstance, then we are engaging to make sure that we get the best chance at preserving jobs and giving small businesses and middle-income families lower electricity prices without affecting the target at all.
But yes, presumably if some or all of your 6 amendments don't get through, then there'll be fewer jobs that you will be able to save.
Well, our goal is to save as many jobs as possible. There are deep risks in the Hunter Valley, in the Latrobe Valley, in southeast Queensland to jobs. Or if you're running a light industry firm, if you're running a metal factory, a plastics maker, all of these sectors are likely to lose jobs and simply transfer those jobs to China or India to an unregulated emissions environment. So that's what we're trying to do. And the good faith is to protect the jobs and to keep electricity prices lower whilst directly having an impact on emissions through green carbon or agricultural offsets, waste coal mine gas to make sure that it's used rather than simply flared or vented up into the air as methane, and then thirdly to make sure that there's support for voluntary action by mums and dads and families, which isn't included, which isn't added to the scheme under the ALP's approach, but is under ours.
Christine Milne, you say the Greens amendments will protect and save jobs as well, but you're taking a completely different tack here, aren't you?
Absolutely. Whereas the Coalition and the government are intent on sandbagging the old economy, they're actually going to cost Australia in the longer term in a very great sense. We're already losing jobs overseas. There's a huge opportunity cost in seeing all those clever new technologies actually brought about in Australia going overseas. We've already seen several of our solar companies leave the country. We are going to be ending up in Australia buying back technology from China and the United States that we should have been manufacturing here in Australia. So there's a huge opportunity cost, not to mention the loss of jobs on the Great Barrier Reef, the collapse of the agricultural system in the Murray-Darling Basin. What nobody's facing up to here in either the government or the opposition is the reality that Australia is already impacted by climate change. We are in dangerous climate change and we are moving to catastrophic climate change, and there is nothing that the government or the coalition are doing to address that, and that in the longer term is going to cost us a great deal more. All the economic studies show that if you act fast, if you go for deep cuts early, you transform your economy. You bring on this new economy.